Hi, I'm Wayne Chapin and welcome to my video, $6 per month Windows servers in Microsoft Azure. So what I'm going to be going over, I'm going to be talking about how inexpensive servers are in Microsoft Azure, how I get Windows servers for $6 per month, and why Azure hosted servers are much better than anything you could put on premises, and learning Azure without feeling overwhelmed. So I'm Wayne Chapin, Chief Technology Officer, President of Xerillion. I'm a virtual Chief Technology Officer to my clients. I'm a Microsoft Partner Cloud Solutions Architect, known as a p-csa in the Microsoft partner world. And I'm a Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate Cloud Platform, which is Azure and Office 365. And my background is computer science from the University of Illinois Springfield. So the perception is that hosting servers in the cloud is crazy expensive. And Wayne, we can do it so much cheaper in-house. But the reality is that hosting servers in Azure is low cost and amazing value and better than anything you can put in-house. A few things out of the gate. I spec my Azure Virtual Server CPUs to run at an average of 40 to 60% utilization. I snooze my Azure servers when possible to save the client money. I only buy the storage I need right now, and I use burstable servers whenever I can. And I'm going to talk more about that shortly. So one of the things we run into when we're talking to somebody about comparing hosting their servers in Azure versus on-premises is that they take their on-premises system and they take it exactly as is and put it up into Azure and then price it out that way, not really understanding what they're doing. Then they go, oh my gosh, this thing is so expensive to what I can do on premises. So one of the things we run into when we're comparing an on-premises system and comparing the cost of having it on premises versus in the cloud is that we as IT people generally massively overpower the on-premises system. It's always way more power than we need. I'm very used to having servers that I'm walking up to and looking at, and the host server or the physical server is sitting there running at 1%, 2%, 5% utilization. That's always the way it's been, even from the very first servers that I ever put in. And when we're getting those servers for our customers or we're doing it for the company that we work for, this thing needs to last 6 years. And so we don't know exactly how much processing power we're going to need, how much memory we're going to need, how much disk space we're going to need. We don't want anybody to get upset with us. We don't want to get in trouble that this thing is underpowered or running out of disk space 3 years from now after we bought it. So we put a ton of power in there. We put a ton of processing power, a ton of memory, and a ton of disk space and have fault tolerance all over the place. So that's why on-premises systems are overpowered to start with. So it's really not reasonable to take that system, which is way more power than you need, and then go and put that in Azure. Because in Azure, we get exactly what we need right now. We buy only the compute we need right now. We buy only the storage we need right now. We can incrementally increase or decrease power as we need it. And we have endless storage and storage tiers. We have hot, cool, archive storage tiers that get increasingly cheaper depending on how infrequently we need to access that data. And most importantly, Azure only gets less expensive and faster with each succeeding generation of compute instances, which I'm going to show you. So Azure servers only get cheaper and faster. So what I'm going to show you here, this is important, this is a real world in production servers at clients running 24/7, 365 with the operating system drive only, running hard disk drives as opposed to SSD. And I'm going to be talking about the data drives shortly. An important point here for these prices include all Windows Server OS and CAL licensing in the subscription. So the monthly cost that we're going to be going over here includes the Windows Server OS and CALs, an important point. So when we're doing virtual servers in Azure at Xerillion, we're generally working with a D series, A series, and B series. All right. So the D series, let's start there. That's for heavy continuous workloads, and we usually put SSD drives in those virtual machines. So we'll be running, SQL Server database, remote desktop services, business applications. The A series is for light continuous workloads, and we use hard disk drives as opposed to SSD. Again, SQL Server, remote desktop services, business apps. But where the input-output is maybe not as intense, we don't need quite the bandwidth that we can get from an SSD drive, that we can get from a D series, but we still have a continuous workload that's going on. The B series is new. The B series are for light, bursty workloads, using hard disk drives or solid-state drives. Domain controllers, file servers, small databases. And we've been using these quite a bit. So you're going to see shortly what this means in terms of price. So let's look at the D series here for a second. The D series right now, we can buy Generation 1, Generation 2, and Generation 3 versions of the D series. Right now, all of these are available to us. All right. When I spec out the server, I spec it out exactly the same. I got Generation 1, that's $245 a month. Okay, that's all right. Generation 2, $220 a month. That is 11% less than Generation 1. Generation 3 is $169 per month, which is 24% less than Generation 2. You see where this is going? Each generation is less expensive than the previous one. And I'm going to show you on another slide here that each generation is actually more powerful than the previous one. So what we're having is a situation in Azure where the cost of the compute is going down significantly while the power of the compute is going up. It's fascinating. And here's the A series. Again, light continuous workloads running hard disk drives. Generation 1, $80 a month. Generation 2, $58 a month. And again, this includes the Windows Server operating system and the client access licenses. That is, so here that is 28% less than Generation 1. It's incredible. Let's get to the B series. You see this number coming here? Look at this. The B series, Generation 1, is $17 per month. And it has the same guts as the Generation 2 D series. It's just a billing mechanism with B series. B series was built on the idea that there's a lot of server workloads out there that burst for a while and then they don't do nothing for long periods of time. So with B series, again, it's just a billing mechanism, but it's basically a D series under the hood. With B series, I can do hard disk drives, I can do solid state drives. But with B series, you start out your subscription month with a certain amount of burstable credits, and as your system bursts, you use credits. But as your system is not doing much, you start gaining credits back. And that's how a B series works. And we've been using those a lot. And those really save the customer money. And they're fantastic for things where we don't have continuous use of the processor all the time. Then Azure servers only get faster. So let's look at this. So we just saw the pricing. But again, here's D series, A series, and B series. Well, let's go back to the D series. Well, Generation 1 was built on Intel Xeon E5 version 2 processors running at 2.2 gigahertz. Generation 2 was built on Intel Xeon E5 version 3 Haswell processors with Intel Turbo Boost technology running at 3.1 gigahertz. Generation 3, which is cheaper than all of them, is running Intel Xeon E5 version 4 Broadwell processors with Intel Turbo Boost at 3.5 gigahertz. It's fascinating. So as the price went from $245 a month down to $169 per month, the processing power continued to increase. Same thing with the A series. The A series uses the AMD Opteron 2.1 gigahertz processor. I could not find what Generation 2 has. That's available now. And so in Generation 2, as we saw here, Generation 1 was $80 a month, Generation 2 was $58 a month. But I'm going to take a wild guess. If I find it one day, I'm probably going to guess it's going to be an AMD Opteron, probably running at 3 gigahertz would be my guess. And then the B series compute instances, Generation 1 is running the Intel Xeon E5 version 3 Haswell processor with Turbo Boost technology, running at 3.1 gigahertz. Exactly the same as the D series Gen 2. Now let's do a fun thing. What would it look like in terms of cost if I took these exact same servers and only ran them during business hours for businesses that only needed their servers running during business hours? What would that cost look like? Well, it's fascinating because the cost is 2/3 less than running at 24/7. And I would say half of the clients that we set up Azure hosting solutions for opt to run their servers just during business hours because they can save 2/3 of the cost. So the D series, Generation 3, goes from $169 per month down to $55. The A series, Generation 2, goes from $58 a month down to $19. The B series, Generation 1, goes from $17 down to $6 per month, and that's how I get my Windows servers for $6 per month. in Microsoft Azure. Hence the name of this video. So now let's talk about what hardware you're getting for your money, because it's an important point. This does not equal this. And I'm going to go into some detail about why they're not even closely related. So let's talk about what you're getting for your money. Well, first of all, you're getting the Windows Server operating system and the client access licenses as part of your consumption subscription. You're getting a disaster recovery system for free because we're taking your servers, we're moving them up into the Azure network, and then we're connecting them together through a virtual private network. So your servers are going to be offsite as part of the solution. So we no longer have to worry about maintaining or purchasing an offsite backup disaster recovery system for an on-premises system because your system's not on-premises anymore. We get a massive high-ability rack cluster with 200 plus blades or nodes inside of it and a massive SAN. And we don't just stop there. There are 2 additional replicas of your virtual hard drives that are being synchronously replicated to 2 other racks inside the data center. So you have one virtual hard drive here that your virtual machine is running live on. You'll have another copy of it here maybe, and then on a third rack you'll have yet another copy of it. And as changes are made to your live virtual hard drive file, they're being made to the 2 replica files at the same time. You have a massive battery array. You have massive gas generators. You have perimeter security guards. You have continuous hardware upgrades that you don't have to worry about. You have professional hardware management 24/7, 365. You don't have to deal with any hardware anymore. You can just go ahead and manage and build on and make the system better. You will still manage the operating system. You will still patch and update it. You will still have to go into it to monitor and manage it. But you don't have to deal with the hardware anymore. And you can actually get a server with a 99.9% uptime SLA that's financially backed. So again, going back to this, this is not comparable to this. And think about it. What I showed you was a server that you could go as low as $6 per month, including the Windows operating system licenses. And you get this for your money, not this. Azure storage is cheap, robust, and endless. You get a minimum, this is important here, a minimum of 3 copies of VHD files real-time replicated on 3 different SANs and 3 different rack clusters. This is not the same thing as putting a VHD file on one of your servers and calling it a day. So if you want to do hard disk drives, 512 gigs of storage, $26 per month. 1 terabyte, $49 a month. If you want to go SSD, 512 gigs a month, we'll get $87. 1 terabyte, $160 per month. If you want to do backups, backup storage, very inexpensive. 1 terabyte of locally redundant storage is $60 per month. What does locally redundant storage mean? That is the set of 3 replicas inside the data center. So as your backup file is stored in Azure, there's 2 other copies of that backup file inside the data center. What we do is when we configure backups for clients, we do geo-redundant. So 1 terabyte of geo-redundant storage is $110 per month. Geo-redundant storage means that in addition to the set of 3 backup files that are in the primary data center, there's another set of 3 backup files in the peering data center. And for the Chicago data center, which is the north central region, the south central region is its peering data center, which is in San Antonio, Texas. So what we do in this case is we set up our clients so that their backups have a set of 3 in Chicago and they have a set of 3 in San Antonio. Then you can get into data tiers for even cheaper storage. So let's go back here real quick. I showed you data drives on servers, hard disk drives, solid state drives, and backup. But what if you have a situation where you've got terabytes and terabytes of images, drawings, videos, backup files from 10 years ago that you have a retention policy that you need to hold on to? Well, no problem. We can also set you up with cool or archive data storage tiers. And these are incredibly cheap. So a hot data tier is the tier that we're most familiar with, where we access this data frequently. A cool data tier is data accessed a few times a month. 1 terabyte of cool data storage is $18.50. 1 terabyte, $18.50. That is 62% less than hard disk drive storage on the server. Then we also have an archive data tier. This is meant to be for data accessed a few times a year. It is offline storage. It must be mounted to cool storage to be accessed. 1 terabyte is a whopping $2.50 per month, which is 86% less than cool storage. That's incredible. So if we go back here, here's 1 terabyte of hard disk storage, i.e. the data drive on the server, $49 a month. Then we go into cool storage. 1 terabyte is $18.50. If we go into archive storage, it's $2.50 per terabyte. That is incredible. And again, would be like if you wanted a bucket to hold all kinds of images, drawings, videos, and backup files. So let's talk about Azure fault tolerance. Again, this does not equal this. So let's talk about some scenarios. So I don't want to beat up on on-premises systems too much. There are definitely plenty of people that take pride in their work and have done a nice job setting up a very nice, clean, professional rack. But I've seen plenty of these too, and everybody watching this has as well. So this is a far cry from this data center and then the racks that you would have inside of Azure. This is what you want. So let's talk about host failure in Azure and what that looks like. Well, your virtual machine is going to be running on one of these blades inside of this rack. If your blade fails, the Azure Service Fabric will notice that and it will bring up your virtual machine up onto a different blade. Just easy as that. So within minutes, your virtual machine will be running again. And then as a bonus, Microsoft's going to manage the hardware replacement of that blade that failed, not you. Let's talk about a rack failure. So this rack is a fault zone in Microsoft Azure lingo. And so this rack has its own power, its own cooling, its own networking. If we lose this entire rack, there are 2 other copies of your virtual machine, the VHD files, in other racks in the data center. The Azure Service Fabric will say, this one's down, let's go ahead and bring up the copy of the virtual hard drive that has been synchronously real-time replicated in one of the other racks. Now, I personally have not had, in 4 years, a failure of my virtual machines. I have not gone through a blowout like that. I do know somebody that in 2015 went through this in Azure. He said that he had 50 virtual machines in the Chicago data center, and there was an outage. And he said within an hour, all 50 virtual machines came back up. It was all automated. He didn't handle any of that. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating. That's really good to know. So if a blade fails, the Azure Service Fabric is going to see that and bring your virtual machine up in another blade. If the rack fails, the Azure Service Fabric is going to see that and bring up one of the replicated copies of your virtual machines in one of the other racks. So how about a power outage? Well, if the power outage is on your side and not in Azure, you're probably just going to connect back in from home on a laptop or home computer. You'll connect in from a coffee shop on a laptop. But also importantly, your field and remote workers won't be stranded as your system has gone down and all the servers that are being hosted there are not available to anybody. How about the power outages in Azure? First of all, Azure has a massive battery array, and that will run until the giant gas generators start. And then the data center will run on the gas generators until power is restored to the data center. And I've seen a picture of these tanks. They look like the tanks that you would have over at an airport. And so, conceivably, it could just continue to run and just fuel just brought over to the Azure data center until the grid's restored. I mean, if they need to go that long. But that's what happened. Most people have battery backups to their servers. Most of them do not have gas generators. And then how about a site disaster? What if the site disaster is your building? Well, again, with Azure, by the nature of the solution, you have built-in free disaster recovery because your servers are already off-site to begin with. So what would happen is we would connect you back in from home on a laptop or home computer. You connect in from a coffee shop on your laptop. Your field and remote workers won't be stranded. Kind of similar to the power outage before. But let's talk about a site disaster where it's Azure. Probably the most likely scenario of a data center outage, a region being out, would be a meteor or a bomb. Those would be the two things. So let's say that did happen. Well, let's talk about the peering data centers that I know well, which is north central US and south central US. So this is Chicago, and this right here is San Antonio, Texas. So the way we set up our customers is all of their virtual hard drives are locally redundant inside the Azure data center in the north central region. But if there was some disaster to the data center, what would happen is that none of those would be available at this point. What we'd end up doing is going to the south central data center. We'd build up a virtual network, restore the virtual machines from backup, and then connect up a VPN and get people connected back into the data center there. So they would be out for a few days. Now, this is if there was a bomb or a meteor to the north central data center. You could make that quicker. You could do something called Azure Site Recovery. So in addition to your backups, which are replicated to the peering data center in a different region, you could have 2 real-time copies of your virtual machines being replicated. So we could have the virtual network ready to go. We could have replicated copies of your virtual hard drives. So that if we did have a disaster over in Chicago, for example, within minutes, we could bring up those same servers in San Antonio. So there's an SLA for single instance virtual machines, and I'll go through this quick. It used to have 2 virtual machines running at the same time providing services, so that if one went down, the other would be available. But with a virtual machine with SSD drives, you can actually get a 99.9% uptime SLA. So that is under 43 minutes per month of downtime, and the SLA is met. So why Azure over on-premises systems? Well, first of all, it's very low cost. There's no hardware to maintain or refresh ever. You get the Windows Server licenses and CALs are going to be included, and you can do the same thing with Microsoft SQL Server. You can add that to your subscription. It's very cost efficient. You use only what you need right now and only when you need it. No on-premises disaster recovery system is needed, and it's a far more robust and secure system than you can purchase or build on-premises. And you can easily switch to a new, lower cost, higher power compute series that comes out in the future. So remember I was showing earlier there was the D series. There was generation 1, generation 2, generation 3. And I showed you how the price was going down while the power was going up. Well, what happens when generation 4 comes out? Let's say all of your servers are running generation 3. Well, it's a 5-minute change to go in and say, well, give me generation 4 because it's going to cost me less and I'm going to get a more powerful server. Wow, the flexibility of that. You could never do that with an on-premises system. You can do that with Microsoft Azure. And you can also easily increase or decrease power of the system with business needs. So when business is going great, we're adding people left and right, it's very easy to add power to the system. You know, everybody's happy about that. It's actually a good problem to have, right? But how about when the economy is not doing so good or a business is not doing so good? Well, what then? Well, you know, maybe a system that had 30 people accessing it maybe only needs 15 people accessing it right now. It's a 5-minute change to turn down the power of the system and save that customer money because they don't need all the power that they previously used. So it's great for powering up a system during great times, but when times are getting a little rough, we can down power the system and save operational costs as well for the company. And also, there's endless storage and ultra low cost storage tiers. So we'll never have to worry about running out of space on our file server again. And also we could do smart things like say, well, there's data we should archive. Let's move it into a cool storage tier or an archival tier that's significantly less expensive, but we know that data's there should we ever need it. So when we integrate a company, here's the things we go through. First of all, we list the servers and determine how much power and storage is needed. We determine how many users are concurrently accessing the servers. How many people are accessing those servers at the same time. And we determine if there are any servers that can be snoozed to save the customer money. In other words, are there any servers that are not really used much after hours? We determine if we need to virtualize any Windows apps. And then we determine if there are any servers that cannot be migrated, or shouldn't be migrated, or should just be shut down of the process. Another important one is we determine if we need a local large file cache. So in other words, is there extensive use of files that are 10 to 100 megs or larger? So that'll typically be, if somebody's actively working with image files, drawing files, things like that. So we can still work with that, but there's just some stuff we have to do around that. The internet connection clearly is key in this scenario. So this is what we look for. First, we want to confirm the size of the internet connection, the bandwidth. So we prefer a 100 megabit fiber internet connection. We have been seeing clients now get pretty low cost 1 gigabit fiber internet connections. That we would love to have. Prices around that are $500 to $1,300 per month. Then we want to confirm the speed or the latency. And this is what we're looking for. If we take a bit and send it out to the data center and comes back, how long is that round trip? So what we want, ideally, is 10 milliseconds or less. If we're just working on a local area network, and that latency will probably be like 1 millisecond, nothing. On a wide area connection, an internet connection to the data center over a virtual private network, we're looking for 10 milliseconds or less, which is what we can often get with a fiber internet connection. But we can go all the way up to 60 milliseconds. When we're over 60 milliseconds, we usually need to virtualize the applications using remote desktop services. And then we want a backup internet connection. So if fiber is our primary, which is our hope, then we'll use a coaxial cable internet backup. And then if that's not available, which happens sometimes to our customers who are in a single tenant building, maybe they're a manufacturer or something like that, we can set them up with the cellular Wi-Fi over a Verizon internet connection. So let's talk about learning Azure. Now this one is for the IT pros that are watching this, the people who are either consultants but used to on-premises systems, or they are internal IT people that are very interested in bringing Azure into their computer network. Well, I want to take you through doing this without getting overwhelmed. So the first thing I want you to do is go in and search Microsoft Azure Administrator course. Start there. Okay. It's 100% free from Microsoft. It's videos and slides, short videos and short slides. It gives you an orientation. You'll set up virtual networks. You'll build virtual machines. You'll understand security, how to scale those things. It's 23 hours of videos and slides, and then 30 to 40 hours of practice labs, especially for you people who like to do hands-on stuff. So it's a 70-hour commitment. So 2 hours, 4 days a week, you're probably looking at about 3 months. You just need to make it a priority in your life. It's what I call boring exciting. Learning it can be a little tedious. There's some things you probably aren't that interested in, some things you are interested in, but the process of learning it isn't the fun part. Knowing it is the fun part. So you just got to get it in your head. So take those 3 months, put that time in, take the course, and get oriented. It'll do you a world of good. And you want to take it a little further? Complete your MCSA cloud platform. Those are the 2 exams, 70535 and 70533. 70535 is the world of Azure and all the solutions that you can put in. 70533 is really more what we've been talking about, which is infrastructure as a service in the Microsoft cloud. And look at the free subscription that you can get with Azure. Well, the first 30 days of your subscription, you get a $200 credit to do whatever you want. And then for 12 months after that, you get all this stuff. You get one Windows virtual machine you can run 24/7. You get a Linux VM that you can run 24/7. You get 5 gigs of file storage, 5 gigs of blob storage, so you can play around with the different data tiers. You get a 250 gig Azure SQL database. You get a 5 gig Azure Cosmos database. You get a load balancer, virtual networking. You can play with the automation scheduler. And then you get Security Center. So you can learn how to use the advanced security features that you can get in Azure that you do not have available to you on an on-premises system. For most people watching this, I would say that have on-premises system, their servers probably are set up with usernames and passwords that never change. We can do a lot better than that with Microsoft Azure. You just got to skill up. So for those people who say, Wayne, that all sounds great, I don't have time for this, I'm managing a bunch of things, we can talk the talk, but I need somebody to implement this and help us support this later on. Can you help us with this, Wayne? Absolutely. And this is what we do all day long. So what we can do here is we can save you time, money, mistakes, security issues. We're a gold Microsoft partner, actually a multi-gold Microsoft partner. We have Azure certified engineers. I'm Azure certified. And depending on your situation, we could get you up to $3,000 from Microsoft for a small Azure project. And if it's a data center, up to $95,000 from Microsoft for a large data center migration. Anyway, if any of that interests you, you can schedule a call, you can email, you can call our phone number 847-995-9800 or email support@xerillion.com, or just go to our website, check us out, and fill out the form there. So thanks for watching this video. You know, it's an exciting time to be an IT professional. It's an exciting time to be working with Microsoft. And the things that you have access to now that you had to be in some gigantic enterprise company 10, 15 years ago, it's all available to you. It's all free. You can play with all of it. So do the training, get the certification. If you don't have time for this, give us a call. We can talk you through some things. Or if you just want to chat a little bit, I'm always happy to talk about Microsoft Azure. Thanks for watching.